Hello everyone, my name is Slade, I'll be your host, and welcome to Star Wars Did You Know? Rebel privateers were various pirate groups that were hired by the Rebel Alliance leadership to harass Imperial shipping and affiliated assets of the Galactic Empire. These privateering groups were issued with letters of marque and reprisal, and often used the Nova Hawk as their symbol, although individual groups did sometimes have their own emblems as well. Although officially sanctioned by Rebel Alliance High Command, both Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar disliked using pirates in Rebel Alliance operations, and so most privateering groups were hired and employed by sector commanders, limiting to the sector of space those commanders had under their jurisdiction, although some privateer groups were hired by the Ordnance and Supply Command to make up for shortfalls in the Rebel Alliance's supply chain. Despite functionally being pirates, Rebel privateers did have set rules of engagement which they were meant to follow. These included that all cargo and currency seized was to be split 50-50 with the Rebel Alliance. In practice, most of the cargo was sold to the Rebel Alliance anyways. There were some exceptions to this rule, though. All captured slaves were to be set free, and illegal drugs surrendered to the Alliance for destruction. In addition, captured Imperial personnel were to be turned over to Rebel Alliance intelligence, and all privateers were issued with prize money for both captured starships and Imperial personnel. In addition to these economic rules, there were several policies that the Rebel Alliance expected its privateers to adhere to. First and foremost was to minimize loss of life and bloodshed when capturing cargo. In addition, only Imperial and other designated ships were to be attacked. No Rebel, civilian, or neutral vessels were authorized. As a final note, no civilian hostages were allowed to be taken at any time by the privateering group. Violation of any of these rules would result in a letter of marque being revoked, and the privateering group being designated as pirates, with all rebel forces in the area being authorized to eliminate them on sight. To enforce these rules, individuals known as observers were placed with privateering crews. Usually these were intelligence officers from Alliance intelligence, and it was their job to keep the privateers in check and remind them of their duties as stated under the issued letter of marque. Given this, most rebel observers were disliked by the privateer crews they worked with, and it was rarely a long-term commitment by individual rebel observers, who in some cases were so disliked by their privateer crews that these crews would go out of their way to make the rebel observer as miserable as possible in the hopes of driving them away and getting out from under the observation of the Rebel Alliance, if only for a little time. However, despite these issues and misgivings by Alliance High Command, Rebel privateers proved incredibly successful, being able to secure supplies that sector commanders needed directly from the Galactic Empire, enabling the continuation of the war on multiple fronts that the Rebel Alliance might not have been able to supply on their own. As with any such organization, the crews of Rebel privateering groups were drawn from across the galaxy from all walks of life. Former criminals were included in their number, as were disaffected soldiers, and even former Imperials who had chosen to go rogue and work indirectly for the Rebel Alliance against their former masters. The reasons for doing this were as varied as the individuals who chose to become rebel privateers. However, some of the benefits, in addition to the financial gains, included the use of rebel safe ports and repair facilities, supplies, and intelligence provided by the Rebel Alliance, and in the cases of former criminals, they were offered amnesty and pardons, although the more extreme crimes such as murder, etc., were not allowed to join the ranks of the rebel privateers in most cases. The sorts of craft that were used by rebel privateer groups were as varied as the individuals crewing them, and could be anything from various sorts of starfighters such as Z-95s, Uglies, and sometimes X-Wings in the case of particularly well-supplied privateer groups, and could also include larger ships such as light, medium, and bulk freighters, and even light capital ships such as various gunships, corvettes, and frigates. Due to their very nature, privateering groups tended to have a much more motley collection of ship than a standard Alliance military unit, which as the war progressed became more and more standardized, whereas the privateering groups simply used whatever they were either supplied with or could get their hands on, and this sometimes would include even Imperial craft in cases where an Imperial crew would defect and turn into a privateering group working for the Rebel Alliance. It is unclear for just how long these rebel privateer groups operated. Certainly, when the Rebel Alliance was in effect, these privateering groups proved a valuable asset against the vast might of the Galactic Empire. However, it is quite possible that once the New Republic was formed following the Battle of Endor, these privateer groups were either disbanded or rolled into the New Republic military. It is certain that by the time of the Pelion-Gaverson Treaty in 1980Y, there were no rebel privateer groups still in operation. However, regardless of how long they remained in effect following the Battle of Endor and the rise of the New Republic, it cannot be denied that these privateer groups provided a valuable asset to the Rebel Alliance in their fight against the Galactic Empire, both in harming the Empire directly and in supplying the various sector commands with the supplies they needed to continue fighting the war. Alright everyone, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe. There'll be more content coming. If you've got any questions or comments, by all means leave them and I'll be responding to them shortly. Until next time, this is your host Slade, and this has been Star Wars Did You Know?